Okay, here we go. We're at chapter 5, which is called the Shamanic Way. So after a considerable amount of time with all the weird things happening in the house, it was then that I came in contact with my lion shaman man that I called Bashir, which means bringer of glad tidings. And I started communicating with him often using my rhodolite crystal that I had purchased. But then I found that I could become a channel as my head started to move into pendulum-like movements. So if I wanted to ask a question, my head would go up and down in a yes mode, and if the answer was no, it would go sideways in a no motion, just like a pendulum, except I had no control over those movements. So I communicated often with my shaman man and found that he was my protector between worlds, and he would often do his grid-like dance every night, keeping me safe during the weird happenings. There was one night in particular where there was a really strange shrill coming from the kitchen, and I got up to investigate, and I could hear the noise coming from the kitchen bench and wasn't sure what it was, and I was scrambling for the light to turn it on, which I eventually found, but I was very hesitant because I was frightened of what I would see. And when I turned the light on, there was absolutely nothing there. So I went back to bed, and the next day, as I was cleaning up the kitchen benches, I noticed this stuff on the bench, which was akin to something like soot or dust. So obviously, whatever was making the noise last night wanted me to become aware of what was on the kitchen bench. But I decided no, I would get rid of it. So I got out the dustpan and brush and threw it out onto the garden. So after that, there was more sorts of visitations. We had some problems with the plumbing in the house. We had a blocked pipe and it needed to be extended, so we had to get a plumber in to work on that. And after that was completed, I've always had the ability to communicate with all of my animals, and I had a very favourite Persian cat. All of my deceased animals died at home. We never ever put any of them down, but this particular cat had a very unpleasant passing, and she was the only one that never made any contact after she passed, which was rather upsetting, because it would have been nice to know that she was comfortable and happy where she is. So I was cleaning up and washing up at the kitchen bench this particular evening, and the next thing I heard this distinctive cat meow that I was so familiar with, that I had heard very often over many, many years, and it suddenly dawned on me that it was my beautiful Persian cat. And I was trying to figure out where it was coming from, and it eventually led me to the front door. And I opened the front door, and in the distance was this beautiful white long-haired creature, just looking like the same cat that I had owned for years and years and years. and I knew it was her. So her spirit, wherever it had been, was finally freed to go on to the other worlds. And no sooner had I stared at her than she simply disappeared. So she was buried in the backyard and obviously stuck between worlds. But coincidentally, she was buried right next to that little beady-eyed duck. So I often wondered whether they had helped to get her to move it or they into the other worlds, or there was some sort of energy grid blockage there, and when the plumber did his work, she was finally released. Whatever the outcome, I'm grateful that she is now where she needs to be. Okay, so that's it for that chapter, so I'll continue on next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.